Welcome to Realism and Naturalism. This section of the course is going to cover modules 10 and 11. In this semester, that is going to cross over 2 weeks. So module 10 will include Editha and the Storm, and module 11 will include James is the pupil and to build a fire. You'll read Editha and the Storm this week, and then the pupil and to build a fire next week. So for module 10, again, all you need to read for this week is Howell's Editha and Chopin's The Storm. Chopin's The Storm is short. It's a very short story. And I think that you may find these readings easier to follow, but they may be more annoying. In some ways, you're supposed to be frustrated as you read. But first, let's start with talking about what realism is. These are going to be works of realism. It's a literary movement that started in the 19th century, that's the 1800s, and it's a reaction to Romanticism. So you might want to just look at your notes and think about as you're reading, ooh, these stories are going to be different from Romanticism, the Romanticism that we read. I mean, especially look at something like Young Goodman Brown. These stories are going to feel a lot different from Young Goodman Brown. William Dean Howells wrote Editha. You're reading that this module. And he says that realism is the truthful treatment of material. Remember that you take the American Scholar to heart here. Emerson's American Scholar. You think about what is the truthful treatment of material? How do you get at the real truth of something? What does truth mean and what does real mean? For the realist, is this going to be a physical reality, psychological reality, social, spiritual? What kind of realism is it? And most of the realists are going to be focusing on one kind of reality. For instance, when you read James the Pupil, you're going to find something that's more of a psychological realism. When you are reading London's To Build a Fire, it's more of a naturalism that you're going to encounter. You've got more of nature there. And in The Storm, you've also got some naturalism in The Storm, although in some ways you have a lot of symbolism in the weather in The Storm. But think about how real is a story, how true is a story, if you have only a portion of that reality. So think about this from what you think, reflect on it personally, and what you think about the stories. Realists, as authors, usually present a truth that is verifiable by experience. Truth is something like scientific fact. Think back to the Romantics. They were arguing something totally different. They are saying that truth and reality are more than what we experience with our 5 senses. The realists are looking more for evidence and something that you can document. If you cannot demonstrate it for the realist, it isn't necessarily true or real, or at least it isn't really something you can talk about. You can't discuss it intelligently. And again, from your own personal perspective, think about truth. Do you believe that truth is purely material? What does it mean for truth to be purely material? Can you see, measure, and touch God, love? Are God and love real? What does reality come to then if all you can talk about in realism are the things that are measurable, touchable, whatever? What do your answers indicate about the realist approach now that you've read the Romantics? Realists do usually believe in democracy, and somewhat like the Romantics, they will present the common or the ordinary. The hero is going to be the ordinary man, not the great man. It won't be about a king. It won't be about a prince, those sorts of characters. The events are going to be common and not spectacular. The difference between the realist and the Romantic, though, is that the Romantic will look at the ordinary man or the ordinary situation and find something wonderful, amazing, inspiring within that. The realist is going to look at the common, not spectacular man and show you just how unspectacular he is. You're going to find the kind of deflating reality of the ordinary person without a whole lot of redemptive qualities necessarily. Realists usually do not, on both of these, they do not try to transcend the immediate to find the ideal. The common man isn't going to do a common deed in a common situation and then suddenly there is a transcendent, redeeming something that happens from it. It's just going to end being common and plain. The realists also do not follow the traditional artificial literary models. They are not going to be looking at a story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end and say, we have to bring closure and find meaning in this. If you think about the way that we live life, very often we try to impose literary models on our lives and say, I am here doing XYZ today because of this other event before that had meaning. We try to find meaning in our actions and in events that occur in our lives, the choices we make. And the realist might say that the meaning really isn't there. It's all just kind of happenstance. So the realist is not going to make things turn out nicely in the end. Or perhaps, as in the case in the storm, there might be an event where you would hope some justice would happen and really everybody just kind of lives happily ever after. So you may be kind of jarred by the way that the stories end. But they do not follow tradition. They do not follow those traditional literary models, and they do not try to transcend the immediate in the ideal. They do not focus on the ideal. They try to truthfully present what happens in the real world, but not the fairy tale world. You certainly won't go off into the woods like young Goodman Brown and have miraculous, amazing things happen. A realist's real world is often not a spiritually transcendent world. You won't find symbols pointing to something above. Faith, the character Faith in young Goodman Brown refers to a spiritual reality of faith. You're not going to get that kind of transcendence here. When reading the realist stories, ask yourself if the author does address religion or the soul. See what those things might be if they're there, and they may not be there. Finally, the realists do not follow the traditional novel form. The hero does not always get the girl or win the war or even come back alive. Instead, the stories may just leave you hanging at the end, just like life does sometimes. Something may happen and it doesn't seem like it really results in something clear. So just as we don't understand everything in life, you may get to the ends of these stories and wonder, why did that happen? That is what the realist is aiming for. He wants you to see that things happen in a way that is true to life. So for Module 10, as I said, you'll want to read Howell's Editha, Chopin's The Storm, and then reflect on those. I also have in this module a video on how to find articles from the University of Mobile Library. Please watch that also.